I just went through 4 years of engineering and 2 years of business school to come and work at Canada's largest financial institution, Canada's largest bank, and find out that the financial system is bankrupt? What is this? You don't learn about this in school.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Bitcoin is Freedom show. The Bitcoin Freedom show is a podcast where I share the message of my mentors like Jim Rohn about capitalism, and I interview the most influential people in the Bitcoin space. Bitcoin is freedom, Bitcoin is hope, and Bitcoin is fixing the world. So please make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn your post notification on. So now, ladies and gentlemen, today's guest, the one and only, a proud Canadian with 30 plus years of experience in the trading space, especially in the risk, credit, and bond space. Correct me if I'm wrong. And just like me, you will see our guest today. He likes to hold his word and his opinion. He does not like to swear, and he's not calling out people that deserve it on podcasts and on tweets. So as a Canadian and a math lover, it is my honor to bring to you for the first Bitcoin is Freedom show, a Canadian Bitcoin legend, the one and only Greg Foss.
Thanks for having me. Wow, what a nice introduction.
So, Greg, I first want to thank you for doing what you're doing in the space, because I think there's a lot of young people that are doing it. There's less people that are from your age and that have a lot of experience doing it. And I want to thank you for that, because I've been able, because of people like you, to orange pill people like my mom and my dad, which I'm proud, and I thank you greatly for that.
Well, thank you.
All right. So Ken, for the people that don't know you, Ken, I would like to know your Bitcoin story, Greg.
Sure.
How you got involved in Bitcoin, and maybe a little bit of your background too.
Yeah, no, because it's you know, tightly meshed. Let's put it that way. So first of all, so thanks for having me. My background. Let's start with the fact that I grew up in Montreal. Okay, I'm from Montreal, a proud Montrealer. When I was 20, what was it? I guess in 1982, I was 19 years old. I had a transformational experience in my life. I knew I wanted to to go to McGill. I was studying engineering, but I realized, you know, I didn't really like engineering. It's crazy, right? You go, you invest your future, you think, in studying something that you want to do for the rest of your life. And after about 2 weeks, I knew I didn't want to be an engineer at McGill. Okay. But I didn't feel that I should switch from engineering to business right away. I was okay at math. I was at McGill. I actually played sports at McGill, so I was mostly there for the sports. And I said, you know what, I'll always be able to switch from engineering to business, but you can't really switch back from business to engineering, because the credits don't match up on the business side. So, you know, it's crazy. After 4 years of doing some pretty intense mathematics, as engineers tend to do, I graduated in 1986, but I realized again, I don't really want to become a full-time engineer. And I had one chance to apply to a business school in the US. Firstly, because I didn't have very much money, and it cost about $250 US to apply to each business school. And then secondly, it matched up well with what I could bring to the table. Since I didn't have any work experience, it's difficult to get into a top-ranked business school with no work experience. But Cornell was trying to build an international business school, meaning attracting students from around the world. Mm-hmm. And luckily enough, they overlooked the fact that I didn't have any pure work experience apart from summer jobs. And they said, okay, well, we'll accept you because your GMAT, that was the admissions test, was very solid, and your marks in engineering were pretty good. So I like to tell people I was lucky to be a Canadian going to Cornell, because I would not have been accepted, I'm pretty certain, if I was an American going to Cornell. applying to Cornell rather, primarily because of the job experience. Anyway, 1986, I went down to Cornell University, which is in upstate New York, Ithaca, beautiful part of the world, about a 5-hour drive from Montreal. And I was really blessed to live with 6 undergraduate students off campus, but I got to know these guys. I got to know the American culture, and that, you think that Canada and America are very similar, but they're not. There's some subtle and very distinct messages, or cultural differences rather. So anyway, the important thing was I got to live with these guys. I experienced the culture. I'm going to a good school. And after 2 years, I did have the chance to stay in the USA and work on Wall Street. I knew I was switching into the business, the MBA. I was focused on finance. I wanted to become a trader, and I could have worked on Wall Street, but I said, I'm going to come back to Canada. I want to see if I can make a difference in Canada. I had lots of my buddies were still living in Montreal. So I came back to Montreal and I worked for the head office of the Royal Bank of Canada, Place Ville-Marie. If you guys, I'm sure you guys know where that is. And I was working directly for the CFO. Great guy, Emile Beauduc, okay? And Emile was a lifelong Royal banker, smart guy. And I was working in a special projects group for Emile. And one of the projects that I was assigned was to evaluate evaluate an option that was given to us with respect to our Mexican debt exposure. Now, Royal Bank of Canada had lent about $1 billion Canadian. Doesn't sound like a lot of money, but at the time in 1988, that was a lot of money. We had lent $1 billion to Mexico, and Mexico, along with a lot of other what's called LDC or lesser developed countries, had defaulted on this debt. Okay. So the biggest ones that had defaulted were Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, but there were plenty of smaller countries, Philippines, Vietnam, to the extent that the Royal Bank of Canada, which was not unique, in fact, all global banks were in the same situation, had exposure to these loans to lesser developed countries that were non-performing. They were not paying their interest. And in the trading market of these loans, the price of the loans had fallen from 100 cents on the dollar down to about 25 cents on the dollar. Okay. It's a valuation metric to account for the fact that they defaulted. What do you think the recovery rate will be on these loans? And the loans were generally trading around 25 cents on the dollar. In the case of Mexico, therefore, Royal Bank of Canada would have had to write down the value of their Mexican debt from $1 billion down to 250 million, right? Because you have to write $1 billion down to 250 million, a dollar down to 25 cents on the dollar. But the bigger picture was, if we took all of the banks, all of the exposure to these lesser developed countries, Royal Bank of Canada's exposure was about $4 billion in total. And if we had written down the $4 billion to the 25 cents on the dollar level, you would have to write off $3 billion, right? It's just, and where do you write off a loan loss? In a bank, you have to go and write it off against your book value of equity. The book value of equity of a bank is basically its risk absorbing or loss absorbing capital that's used because loan losses are a fact of life. Real estate developers default, mortgage owners default, small businesses default, and countries default. And in this case, $4 billion of defaulted debt needed to be written down in theory. The problem was, and this is what blew my mind, Joe, is I go and I do the quick calculation back of the envelope and I say we need to write down $3 billion of equity, and the book value of equity in the Royal Bank of Canada was less than $3 billion. And I'm like, holy crap, what is this? The Royal Bank of Canada is insolvent, which is basically an accounting term that says they would have a negative book value of equity. Okay. I'm like, I just went through 4 years of engineering and 2 years of business school to come and work at Canada's largest financial institution, Canada's largest bank, and find out that the financial system is bankrupt? What is this? You don't learn about this in school. They don't tell you these are the risks. And I went to my CFO, and I love Emil, don't get me wrong, okay? And I said, Emil, we have a big problem. And he goes, I know, don't tell anybody. And I'm like, don't tell anybody. What the F?